Hello and welcome to News Central TV. I am Adebola Adedua. The headlines. Nigerian court denies IPOB leader Kanu bail over alleged terrorism. Kenya's President Ruto signs controversial housing levy bill into law. DR Congo journalist jailed over fabricated story. Details shortly. The news begins in West Africa, where the Federal High Court in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, has rejected the bail application by the leader of the Indigenous People of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu. The trial judge, Justice Binta Nyako, however, granted an accelerated hearing instead. Counsel for the IPOB leader, Ejimakor, had at the last adjourned date urged the court to admit Kanu to bail before the commencement of the trial. Ejimakor stated that Kanu's health condition was deteriorating, adding that his continued detention by the DSS was a threat to his life. But the counsel for the FG, Adegboyega Awomolo, urged the court to dismiss the bail application and instead grant accelerated hearing, adding that the DSS has a medical facility that could take care of him. After a 7-day warning strike by members of the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, SANU, and the Non-Academic Staff Union, NASU, entered its second day on Tuesday, grounding activities at the nation's public ivory towers. The federal government has criticized the action of the non-academic staff, saying that the withdrawal of their services is contrary to the provisions of Section 18 of the Trade Disputes Act. The two unions began a 7-day warning strike on Monday over withheld salaries, with workers in registry, bursary, works and maintenance, security, and students' affairs withdrawing their services. Both SANU and NASU are protesting withheld salaries by the federal government. The two unions berated the federal government for paying withheld salaries to the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, while neglecting the non-academic unions. And still on the strike, academic activities were partially disrupted at the nation's premier tertiary institution, the University of Ibadan, even as members of the Senior Staff Association of Nigerian Universities, SANU, and their affiliate union, the Non-Academic Staff Union of Universities, NASU, boycotted their duty posts. This complies with a national directive for them to down tools over the inability of the federal government to meet up with the 2009 agreements it reached with the union, amongst other contentious issues. And speaking with newsmen in Ibadan, Chairman of SANU, Omishore Abiodun Rasaki, and the NASU Chair, Michael Oluwafemi Ogunlade, urged the federal government to address all anomalies that they had over the years crippled academic activities. They warned of embarking on a total shutdown if their demands are not met in the next 6 days. And to talk about this, I'm joined live on the news by a public affairs commentator, Jide Johnson. Good afternoon. It's glad to have you join me, Jide.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
All right, straight to our conversation. According to SANU and NASU, the federal government chose to pay ASU their salaries, but withheld theirs. Do you think there's any valid reason for this?
No, I think there's no basis for this clear-cut distinction between the academic staff and non-academic staff with respect to when agreements were reached in 2009 and that of the academic staff was fully implemented to a certain extent, and that of the non-academic staff and senior non-academic staff are not implemented. And I think that calls for an holistic approach in the way we have our university education administration. There shouldn't be any clear distinction with respect to implementation of agreement among the various unions, the academic, non-academic, and the senior staff union in the university system. When you have this, it creates this type of problem and the kind of disparity that we have in terms of the salaries and the payments which you have at this level.
Let me just backtrack a bit. I recall in 2022, there was a strike for 8 months. I mean, both SANU and NASU always seem to be at loggerhead with the federal government. Why do you think this is so?
Well, I think that you have two unions for the non-academic staff. There's a union for NASU is just for the junior staff. That's non-academic staff union. while you have the senior staff non-academic union. So invariably, there's a distinction where you have one body speaking for the academic staff. The academic institution is made up of two bodies, one, the academic staff and the non-academic staff. The non-academic staff provides support services, while the academic staff are the core staff of tertiary institution, tertiary education. So for the academic staff, there's just one union, which is ASU. For the non-academic staff, you have two unions. You have NASU and SANU. So invariably for them to speak with the same voice, they have the same goal, but they have different approach towards achieving their own goal. Like the academic staff union, whether you're a lecturer one, whether you're an assistant lecturer, whether you're a professor, whether you're an associate professor, whether you're a senior lecturer, everybody is a member of the academic staff union. Whereas for the non-academic staff, there's a distinction, there's a level which you must get to before you become a member of SANU. If you have not gotten to that level, you be in NASU, which is the non-academic staff union, which is for staff at a particular cadre, and then SANU for other staff at a particular cadre. So invariably they can't speak, they can't usually speak with one voice like the academic staff, which is more or less like a total shutdown. And in some cases, you will discover that when agreements are reached, it even favored SANU and ASU more than it favored the NASU, which is more or less the backbone of the support services for the university system.
Now, ASU and NASU, have come out to say they had written memos and made efforts towards amicable resolution, but the federal government seems, defiant. Help us recall what agreements were reached by the government with ASU and with SANU and NASU.
Well, you see, if you recall in your opening monologue that this agreement dated back to 2009, and even for that of ASU, I don't think federal government has fully implemented the agreement they reached with NASU, with ASU, which is the academic staff union, not to talk of the senior staff, non-academic staff union, and then the non-academic staff union. So the agreement that was reached in 2009 by the Yar'Adua administration has not been fully implemented, even for ASU and other unions in the university educational system. So that's why some have called for total government overhaul of the system. That government should hand over university education and let the university education be self-funding. And you could see that one of the things that the Tinubu administration did was to say that, okay, we are going to allow each of these institutions to be independent, to be self-sustaining, and so they allow schools to fix the school fees of their institution. So whatever the school makes, the school will be able to have total autonomy with respect to how they pay their staffs, how they pay their non-academic staff, and then both the teaching and non-teaching staff. Let me just break it. The distinction you have here is distinction between the teaching and the non-teaching staff. The teaching are the academic staff, the non-teaching staff are the non-academic staff. And there is no government. If you look back, if we trace back, 2009 to date is about 23 years ago. It's about 13 years ago. That's 13 years ago. How many strikes have we had from ASU? I'm sure we have had more than 10 strikes from ASU, not to talk of the non-academic staff, because government has not fully implemented. It is not even possible for government to fully implement what was in that particular agreement, because one, the academic staff want government to hand over total control of the educational system. At the same time, they want government to be funded, and there's no way government will pour in money into a sector, and government will not want to have control over that particular system. I think the way forward is, because I've argued this, there's no way you can have a unified salary structure for lecturers in Lagos and lecturers in, let me say, in Maiduguri. The cost of living is different. The cost of living is different. Let each institution, and that's why government needs to take away its investment, direct investment in the educational sector, by allowing this institution to be self-sustaining. And I think that's the direction in which the present administration of Tinubu is looking at. Because you must allow this institution to generate their revenue and at the same time to pay their staff based on what they have generated. If tertiary institutions are teaching people to manage businesses, and they themselves can't even manage their institution to be self-sustaining. What principles are they teaching the students they are sending out into the marketplace to help businesses to grow or to develop the economy? So that's just my take. I think we have been paying lip service to it. We are running away from it, but it's time for government to allow this institution to be self-sustaining and to allow some measure of independence for this academic institution. Otherwise, we continue to be having this series of strike that we have, and let this each school develop a contract system to employ their professor, contract system to employ their registrar and all other non-academic staff. And that's when we begin to have true proper structure, educational system that is not centralized.
Well, that's the most we can take on the news. We're hoping SANU and NASU and, of course, the federal government will reach a common ground in no distant time. Well, thank you so much for your time on the news. Jide Johnson, a public affairs commentator. Thank you once again.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to...
The Middle Belt Patriots Group has urged state governors not to succumb to pressure from the federal government to cede lands to herders for grazing purposes. According to the group, yielding to such demand would worsen the security situation in the Middle Belt region and other parts of the country. President Bola Tinubu had urged governors to give parts of their lands to Fulani herders for ruga or ranching purposes. The group, which further described the stance of the federal government on grazing land as provocative, said they rejected the recent directive. It says capitulating to these demands and ceding more land for grazers will only fan the flames of ethnic clashes, further the genocidal massacres, and escalate the violent displacement of indigenes from their ancestral lands. And to talk about this, I'm joined live on the news by National Coordinator, Middle Belt Patriots, Zadeye Yusuf. Good afternoon. Glad to have you join me.
Yes, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. If you could just elaborate on proposals by the Middle Belt Patriots as alternative solutions to the herder-farmer conflicts, happening when it comes to land allocation.
Well, first and most importantly, I must call your attention to the fact that primarily the issues we are suffering from in the Middle Belt would be that of a certain group of people who would say they are herders, they are pastoralists, and they need land to raise their cattle. So primarily, if rearing cattle is something that is a heritage to them, there are people who are farmers who farm as a heritage. Now, even in your own village, as a farmer, unless there is, unless it's an inherited plot of land, but even in your village, you would have to pay for it, you would have to buy it, you would have to acquire it, to raise your cattle. But once that is not the case, it's a situation where somebody just wants a large chunk of land to be given. If you don't have an idea about, the grazing lands, they are not just lands that would be said, buy this place or run, the structure. That's not basically what, the case is. It's a situation where the land is just allocated to people. They want to own it. They want government to be responsible for their upkeep. They want government to be responsible for basically everything. So it's more or less an extension of something we have suffered from, especially looking at it from the security, perspective, where it's less about rearing of cattle, and more about an expansionist idea, looking at particularly the plateau where you kill people, you change the names of their communities and all of that. So for the government to ask people to allocate lands to these kinds of people, it's quite dangerous. It's more or less constitutionalizing or officializing the expansionist agenda, which is something that must be rejected by every legitimate means possible.
What then would you recommend as solution? You touched on the plateau killings. I recall clearly the Christmas Eve attack for last year, 2023. In your own assessment, what would you recommend as a solution, a lasting solution to solve this crisis of herder and farmers, clashes?
Well, the solution is simple. If you are a herder and you want to rear your cattle. It's a private business. It is not the responsibility of the government. If I choose to give birth to 18 children, I can't kill the people in my neighborhood under the guise that the government must build schools that I could afford. It's a private issue. So it's a private business. Run it as a private business. When you locate an area where you feel your cattle will thrive, where you feel your crops will thrive as a farmer, where you feel you are more comfortable raising your animals, then you approach whoever owns the land, like every businessman does. A typical example is if, as an Igbo man, you want to sell spare parts, you pay for your shop, you do all of that. If, as a Yoruba man, you want to raise cocoa, or you want whatever business you want to do, we have people who farm pigs from the Middle Belt. They pay for what they do, they pay for the feed, they pay for the land, they raise their, they either buy it or they get it lease, and they do all of those things. So it's strictly a private business. Nothing difficult about it. Now, once that is done, those who are truly pastoralists, who wants to raise their cattle, they will embrace the opportunity. And by so doing, we'll be able to separate them from the terrorists or the jihadists that have adopted the pastoralist issue to kill people and invade their land. Well, and that will be the best way to deal with them.
Well, we all know that where there is no law, there is no sin. When it comes to legal action, what do you think the government can do where there is encroachment either from the headers to the farmers or vice versa?
Well, the truth of the matter is that the incursion, the invasion has always been on the side of the so-called headers. They are actually not headers, they are jihadists. It's just that because there are headers that share ethnicity with them, they have adopted them to make them, their fighters. So you could kill people and come back and hide inside cows and women and children. Now, once you identify those communities, it is not just about telling them, leave this area. It's about first identifying the criminals that invaded the community and arresting them. And then those that might have come in innocently because they are kings will be given a certain period of time to vacate the area. Or the government has a responsibility of taking them back to wherever they came from, whether it's from Chad, whether it's from Niger, or whatever it is. And when that is done, then you will resettle the people or the surviving members of those communities that have been in the IDP camps. They kill people actually to occupy those places. And then those that are arrested will will face the full weight of the law. That basically is what we hope will happen. We will not encourage farmers to go to their communities and start killing people. We would encourage the government to show its sincerity to drive these criminals, this terrorists out of these lands. Of course, not just telling them to leave because they will definitely relocate, but arrest the criminals behind it, those that are sponsoring it, those that might even be allocating government resources to rebuild those places for them, arrest them, and then chase out the people they have brought in to populate, that area. And once that's done, you bring the people back and resettle them. And I think that would put an end to it.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully, we're looking forward to a time where there will be no clash between farmers and headers, particularly in Plateau State, just Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time on the news. Zariya Yusuf, National Coordinator, Middle Belt Patriot. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to these fighters who will be sacked out of our country. Thank you.
And moving on to another news item, the Nigerian army has denied carrying out reprisal attacks after the deaths of 16 soldiers in the southern Delta State. And this comes after residents allege the troops burned down a village in retaliation. Residents in the oil-producing region claimed that soldiers targeted Okwama, an ethnic Urobo village, following the announcement of soldiers' deaths last Saturday. However, defense spokesman Major General Edward Buba dismissed the accusations of reprisal attacks on Monday evening, calling them fake news. Videos showing houses on fire along the Fakados River have been circulating on social media since Sunday, but their authenticity remains unverified. Nigeria has faced accusations of military reprisals in the past, including the 2001 Zaki Bia massacre in Benue State and 1999 Odi massacre in Bayelsa State, where hundreds of civilians were killed. You're live with News Central TV. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. Thank you for staying tuned. The Federal High Court in Abuja ordered Binance Holdings Limited to provide the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission with comprehensive information on all persons from Nigeria trading on its platform. The court handed down the order following an ex parte motion filed by the EFCC demanding information about Nigerians trading on Binance. In the affidavit filed in support of the motion, an operative of EFCC, Hama Bello, stated that the Special Investigation Team of the Commission, domiciled in the Office of the National Security Advisor, received intelligence that the money laundering and terrorism financing were carried out on Binance. He said on receipt of the intelligence, the team began investigation by conducting surveillance of the activities of the platform. President Bola Tinubu has assured the governorship candidates of the All Progressives Congress in Edo State, southern Nigeria, of the support ahead of Edo State governorship poll. And this was as the candidates were presented to the president by the APC national chairman at the State House in Abuja. Amadine Uyi reports.
In attendance were all stakeholders from the All Progressives Congress in Edo State. The national chairman of the party introduced the governorship candidates to the president.
This distinguished senator, Your Excellency, has succeeded in changing the political landscape of Edo Central Senatorial District. Since 1999, PDP was winning that senatorial district. But he succeeded in putting PDP in a coffin in 2023, and he won the election. He's accepted all over Edo State.
President Bola Tinubu thanked the stakeholders for their unity, reminding them of the supremacy of the party. He assured them that the federal government will stand by them before, during, and after the poll.
The party is supreme, but victory is superior. And very, very important. The leadership from Edo who are here, they've seen politics, particularly in the heat of things before you guys matured into the arena. But you've proved yourself as people we can trust and people we can fight for.
The candidate of the party assured all present that the team is ready for the elections.
What has happened in Edo shows that Mr. President is a Democrat, is a voice for the voiceless. The primary in Edo was well contested and a winner emerged. We have our deputy now. We are setting the ball rolling. Sky is our limit. Now it's time to say bye-bye to PDP in Edo. And development, New Edo is rising.
The Edo State governorship election comes up on September the 21st. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Nigerians have been tasked to end the stigma surrounding menstrual hygiene, saying it affects the growth and development of adolescent girls. And this was as one foundation known as Lisha Foundation visited several schools within the federal capital to teach and inform adolescent girls on the need to discard stereotypes, including myths and misconceptions around menstruation. Amadine Uyi reports.
It was a campaign aimed at enlightening the girl child on the need to maintain good menstrual hygiene.
Menstrual flow for a woman is often a stigma, especially in our local communities. That's why we are here today to tell the girl child to say, don't be worried. Don't be. Every woman experiences it. Whether you like it or not, it must come when it's the time. So be proud of it, own your space, own your body. So we talked to them today about understanding themselves as women. We also talked to them about female hygiene. We talked to them about building self-confidence as a woman, trusting themselves, believing in themselves that they can achieve anything they set their mind on.
The impact we want to get is, let's get people, young girls, understanding the reason why they should be hygienic in their menstrual cycle. So that is what we are trying to, and as the President Female Journalist Network, is an opportunity to also see these issues and spotlight them, especially in the media.
The campaign by the Lisha Care Foundation visited some schools at the Adegboyega Area Council of Abuja, where members of the foundation had quality time with adolescent girls in the schools, as part of efforts to encourage and inspire them.
I learned about menstrual hygiene, how we are going to take care of ourselves during our menstrual flow. As part of the IED, I learned how to never give up in life, to always work harder to achieve our dreams.
Girls are very, very vulnerable on their attitude, especially on how to take care of themselves, on how to even approach their opposite sex. This is the period when girls are being raped, but with the education they have received, they'll be able to take care of themselves, they'll be able to behave well and be very neat, and this will equally give them, when they grow up, good husbands that will handle them properly, and they'll also learn how to take care of their own children in future.
Members of the foundation say their objective is to reach about 10,000 girls within the federal capital to help discard stereotypes affecting the girl child, directly tackling myths and misconceptions which affects their development. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
You're watching News Central now. Coming up, tensions continue to escalate in DR Congo amid interference talks. We have details shortly. Join us again. The news continues in Central Africa, where the presence of over 100 armed groups engaging in multiple conflicts over territorial and resource control continue to create instability in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The growth of activity by the M23 rebel group and the outbreak of no-ending conflict offers minimal hope for resolution, especially in the eastern provinces. Meanwhile, some Congolese have criticized external interference as they believe fuels the conflict between Rwanda and DRC. This follows a comment by the former South African president, Thabo Mbeki, during a lecture at the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs. And still in DR Congo, a prominent Congolese journalist, Stalis Bojakera, has been sentenced to 6 months in prison for falsely implicating military intelligence in the murder of an opposition politician. A Kinshasa court on Monday found Bojakera guilty of forgery and spreading misinformation, sentencing him to 6 months and a fine of $400. Bojakera has been behind the bars since September after an article in Jeune Afrique magazine suggested the involvement of military intelligence in killing of opposition figure Cherubin Okende last July.
Dit établi en fait comme en droit, à charge du prévenu Stanislas Bojakera Chamala, la prévention des contrefaçons ou falsifications des sceaux et l'en condamne avec admission de circonstances atténuantes du fait de sa délinquance primaire à 6 mois de servitude pénale principale.
Donc il n'y a pas lieu à cumuler, donc on a retenu la seule peine de 6 mois de servitude pénale, plus le paiement d'une amende de 1 million de francs congolais. Dès que ce paiement d'amende est effectué, je pense que notre client va recouvrer d'abord sa liberté en attendant d'envisager de faire l'appel contre cette décision que nous trouvons nous surprendre parce que tous les moyens de défense qui ont été déposés n'ont pas été bien adjugés par les juges.
In East Africa, Kenya's President William Ruto has signed into law a controversial bill paving the way for the government to continue collecting a housing levy of 1.5% of workers' monthly pay. The levy is intended to pay for the construction of affordable housing for poorer Kenyans. But this sparked an outcry from the opposition and a large section of the population who feel burdened by a raft of new taxes. A judge had stopped the deduction, citing a lack of a legal framework. However, MPs amended and approved the bill last week, despite objections from opposition legislators. To address these issues raised by the court, the new law now extends the levy to other workers and now requires non-salaried Kenyans and the informal sector to pay the levy. A bus carrying students from a prestigious Kenyan university has been involved in a fatal collision with a truck on a rain-soaked highway. Reports indicate that 11 students have lost their lives in the accident, with a further 42 sustaining serious injuries. The incident unfolded on Monday along the Magwa stretch, situated 360 kilometers away from the capital of Nairobi. The students, hailing from Kenyatta University, were on their way to the coastal town of Mombasa when the catastrophe occurred. Road accidents are frequent occurrence in Kenya, largely due to poor road conditions and a disregard for traffic regulations. While there is a decrease in 2023 compared to the previous year, data from the National Transport and Safety Authority reveals a concerning trend for 2024. Ugandan security forces are on the high alert after they said fighters from an Islamic State-linked group entered the country at the weekend. According to the army, the Allied Democratic Forces, ADF, militants are planning attacks in urban areas, places of worship, schools, and public events. It urged the public to remain vigilant to avoid being victims of ADF terror. The ADF has been linked to a series of deadly attacks in Uganda, including targeting a school last June. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni has repeatedly said the operation has succeeded in killing a large number of ADF fighters, including some commanders. And still ahead, U.S. President, Israeli Prime Minister hold first phone call in a month. Find out more on this after the break. Join us again. U.S. President Joe Biden and his Israeli counterpart, Benjamin Netanyahu, have held their first phone call in a month amidst warnings of an imminent famine in northern Gaza. And this comes after several humanitarian organizations issued a warning stating that nearly everyone in the besieged strip is having difficulty getting enough food, with estimated 70% of people in northern Gaza facing horrible hunger. The European Union's top diplomat also blamed Israel for the crisis on Monday, saying an impending famine in Gaza was entirely man-made.
The President and the Prime Minister spoke at length about Rafah today. The President explained why he is so deeply concerned about the prospect of Israel conducting major military operations in Rafah of the kind it conducted in Gaza City and Khan Yunis. First, more than 1 million people have taken refuge in Rafah. They went from Gaza City to Khan Yunis and then to Rafah. And they have nowhere else to go. Gaza's other major cities have largely been destroyed. And Israel has not presented us or the world with a plan for how or where they would safely move those civilians, let alone feed and house them and ensure access to basic things like sanitation.
And joining us now to give a bit more context on this story is our international correspondent, Afua Hagan. Good afternoon from here. Glad to have you join me. Okay, Afua, there's a new report from the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, which warns of an imminent famine in northern Gaza. What more can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so this is a group of organizations, including the UN and governments of several countries, that have said that the situation when it comes to hunger in Gaza is leading towards a famine. And actually, in some areas, famine is already there. In other areas, people are at category 5, and that's where they barely have enough food to eat. Now, the warnings of a famine in Gaza have been coming for many, many days now, and it looks as if famine is already there. You have children who have been dying from hunger already. You have women in Gaza who are saying that they have less than one meal a day and that they're trying to give all their food to their children. And if you have famine in this area, that only adds to the humanitarian disaster, which is already unfolding across Gaza, but particularly in Rafah city, where you have so many people packed into this small, tight area. They're usually home to about 250,000 people, now has about 2.3 million people in it. And when you couple that with the fact that resources are not getting into that part of the country, that aid is really, really faltering at the border. You know, Gaza needs about 500 trucks of aid a day. That's what it was getting before October 7th. And now it's getting about 90 or even less trucks a day. There has been aid that will be sent via ship, and that will land at the port that America is building at the moment. But that is also taking its time, which means that the toll on civilians in Gaza is increasing every day. And it's thought if the assault on Rafah goes ahead, then a number of people that will be in that category 5, and that is the category of they have barely enough food to eat, will double. And probably about half of the people in Gaza, so that's about 1.15 million or so, will be in that category 5 of barely enough food to eat, while the rest of the country slips into famine.
Well, Afua, we've seen reports of the death of a key Hamas figure. I'm wondering what impact this will make on the ongoing conflict.
That's right. So this was the deputy leader of Hamas by the name of Marwan Issa. He died in an Israeli airstrike. That's according to a White House official. Now, Hamas have not confirmed or denied that this has happened. He's thought to be one of the architects of the attack that happened in Israel on October 7th. Now, Israeli media sources have reported that Mr. Issa was killed in an airstrike that was aimed at a tunnel complex. Gaza is famous for having these underground tunnel complexes. That's thought to be one where Hamas leaders hide, and also where some of the hostages might be being held as well. And so he was killed in an airstrike that was aimed at one of those tunnels. Now, he is the deputy commander of Hamas's military wing, one of Hamas's most wanted men, and like I said, one of the architects of that attack on October 7th. Now, he was detained by the Palestinian Authority in 1997 until the start of the Second Intifada in the year 2000, and then he was released in a prisoner swap. But yes, it's thought that he has been killed in that airstrike.
Well, regarding the imminent famine in Gaza, like you rightly elaborated upon, and also the assault on Rafah, I'm wondering, what is Israel saying in relation to this?
Well, that was one of the topics of the phone call that Joe Biden had with Benjamin Netanyahu, and warned him that if the assault on Rafah goes ahead, that yes, it risks pushing millions of people into famine, which is what everybody wants to avoid, along with the rest of the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in that part of the world. Now, if that assault on Rafah goes ahead, yes, famine will happen, but also the death toll of 31,000 will increase as well. Now, Mr. Biden was talking to Mr. Netanyahu about having a clear purpose to wanting to end Hamas, and also that clear purpose should not involve collective punishment, as some people are calling it, and having the civilians in Gaza as collateral damage. He said that Israel needs to have a clear purpose of how it's going to get rid of Hamas, and that shouldn't involve the taking of Rafah in any other city. Now, whether Israel listens to that advice from Mr. Biden or not remains to be seen. We were initially told that the assault on Rafah would begin at the beginning of Ramadan, and that was on Sunday that has just gone. A couple of Sundays ago. Now, if that happens during Ramadan, then it's seen as even a greater insult than it would be usually to attack any part of Gaza. But Ramadan is usually quite a hotbed time in this part of the world. And so, yes, we were told that the assault will come on the 10th of March. It hasn't come, which lots of people are grateful for, but that means that it could be imminent at any time. And like I said, the 2.3 million people in Gaza at the moment, well within that humanitarian crisis, not getting enough aid and being pushed into famine. Now, whether, like I said, President Biden has said enough to perhaps pause that assault on Rafah remains to be seen.
Well, thank you so much for bringing context to this, war happening between Israel and Hamas. We'll connect with you pretty soon, I believe. Thank you so much, Afua Hagan, our international correspondent. Headline inflation rates increased to 31.70% in February from 29.90% in January. What's changed during this period that significantly impacted the numbers? Nigeria's annual inflation rate this February soared to a high 31.7%, which was last seen in 1996. Now, food inflation, which accounts for the bulk of Nigeria's inflation basket, continues to climb, reaching 37.9% in February, the highest since August 2005, from 35.4% in the prior month. Dr. Joshua Bamfo, a partner and head of the transfer pricing services practice at Anderson in Nigeria, helped make sense of this.
We are experiencing today is pretty alarming. You have to go back to sometime in January of 2023. Inflation was deemed to be very high even then. At the time, inflation rate was around 21.8%. As of February 2023, it was around 21.9%. You fast forward it to January, as you rightly said, of 2024, a year after, we saw inflation rate at 29.9%. And that was deemed to be extremely high. And that's the reason why Central Bank of Nigeria actually tried to take measures to intervene to bring it down a little bit. We saw the monetary policy rate increase significantly from 18.75 in July to 22.75. But for it to have actually increased to 31.7% in February is pretty significant. And you can actually...
Rivers Angels head coach White Ogbonda has said his team is going all out for a win when they tackle Edo Queens at the Samuel Ogbemodia Stadium, Benin City on Wednesday. A win for Rivers Angel will qualify them for this season's Super Six. Ogbonda expressed confidence despite having 3 of his key players in Ghana with the Falconets for African Games, and that the players available will execute the job in Benin City. Otunrayo Ezekiel, Chiamaka Okuchukwu, and Blessing Okwe are the players with the Falconets in Accra, Ghana. The match is billed for 4 p.m. local time.
Our own target, just as they are planning, we are planning that match with Edo is a qualification match. Just like I told the player this morning, if we get that match from Edo, that 3 points from Edo, we've already qualified for the Super Six. So we are not even ready to lose any point to Edo Queen in Benin City come Wednesday.
And that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take a look again at some of the major stories. Nigerian court has denied IPOB leader Kanu bail over alleged terrorism. Kenya's President Ruto has signed controversial housing levy bill into law. We also told you that DR Congo journalist has been jailed over fabricated story. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen and follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch us live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Adebola Adeduba.